She showed up early, proud, and ready to watch her son graduate, until two guards told her to leave. They had no idea who she was, or who had her back. Danielle Merriweather didn't grow up with much. She knew how to stretch a dollar, how to keep hope alive when things got hard, and how to hold her head high when folks tried to make her feel small. But nothing, not poverty, not judgment, not time, had prepared her for how proud she felt that morning. She was standing in the parking lot of Arizona State University, gripping a bouquet of red and white roses so tight her knuckles were pale. Her baby, her only child, was graduating. And not just from any program. Jalen had walked off the battlefield, out of military life, and straight into an engineering degree. 4 years of sleepless nights, quiet sacrifices, and part-time jobs that nobody ever saw. Danielle looked down at her shoes, the ones she'd only worn to weddings and funerals. She gave her dress one last tug and took a deep breath. She'd arrived 2 hours early. She wasn't about to miss this. The sun was already hot as she made her way across the open courtyard, weaving through clusters of families, balloons, noise, and camera flashes. Her ticket was in her hand, folded neatly. She even laminated it in a plastic sleeve just in case it got wet. Inside the convocation center, the air was cooler but charged. Danielle approached a volunteer at the gate who scanned her pass, smiled, and pointed toward the reserved seating near the front. Danielle felt a lump in her throat. That's where she was supposed to be, right there, front and center, right where Jalen could see her. The seats were roped off, a sign read, "Honored guests, reserved." Danielle made her way down the aisle and found her assigned row. She took her seat carefully, the bouquet cradled in her lap like a newborn. She adjusted the strap on her purse. Her hands were shaking. That's when they came. Two men in security uniforms, one tall with slicked back hair, the other shorter, stockier, with a clipboard tucked under one arm. They didn't smile. They didn't introduce themselves. "Ma'am," the tall one said, "you're going to need to move. This section is for special guests only." Danielle blinked. "Excuse me?" The shorter guard gestured to her badge. "That badge doesn't look right. This area is for the graduates' families, not the general public." Danielle sat up a little straighter, her voice calm but firm. "I am his family. Jalen Merriweather, that's my son." The tall one sighed like he'd heard 1,000 excuses. "I'm gonna need to see some ID." She reached into her purse and handed it over without hesitation. Her hands were still trembling. Her smile had faded, replaced by something quieter. He glanced at her license, then her badge, then at her again. "Look, we're just doing our job. We don't want any issues, all right? We've had people sneaking in here trying to sit where they're not supposed to." Danielle's eyes met his. She didn't raise her voice. "I didn't sneak in. My son gave me this ticket himself. It came in a university envelope with his name on it." The shorter guard folded his arms. "Still, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside while we clear this up." Danielle looked around. The rows behind her were starting to fill up. A few heads had turned. A couple of cameras were out. She felt it, the heat creeping into her chest. Not from the sun this time, from something else. She stood up slowly, still holding the flowers. "I'm not causing trouble. I just want to watch my son graduate." "We'll get this sorted out," said the taller one, "but you need to come with us." Danielle hesitated. Something inside her told her to stay. She looked back at her seat, the one with Jalen's name on it. He told her she'd be sitting there. He told her it was hers, but no one else was stepping in. And just when it felt like she might give in, something shifted in the air behind her. Danielle turned slightly as the tension tightened around her like an invisible rope. She didn't move toward the exit, not yet. She could feel eyes on her now, not just the guards. Other families were watching from their rows, some whispering, some squinting to get a better look. A few had phones in their hands, pretending to scroll, but their cameras were already recording. The shorter guard motioned again. "Ma'am?" Danielle shook her head once, not fast, not dramatic, just firm. "No, I'm not moving until someone from the university tells me to. My name's on the list. My son earned that seat for me." The taller guard stepped forward, lowering his voice like he was doing her a favor. "Look, we don't want this to get bigger than it has to be." Danielle looked up at him. "It already is." Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise, like a bell in a crowded room. Then someone near the aisle leaned forward, a middle-aged woman in a navy blue dress, pearls, clutching her program. "Excuse me," she said to the guards. Is something wrong? Nothing to worry about, ma'am, the tall guard replied quickly. We're just asking this guest to relocate until we verify her credentials. The woman raised an eyebrow. She's been sitting quietly. You verified her badge at the front, didn't you? The guards didn't answer that. Danielle stayed standing, still holding her flowers. Her arm was starting to ache. She wanted to sit. She wanted to cry. But she did neither. I'm not here for a scene, she said. I'm here for my child. I'm here because he made it. The short one tapped his clipboard. There's no Merriweather listed in the front row. Danielle exhaled. It's spelled M-E-R-R-I. Ma'am, please. She didn't say another word, just stood there, quiet, looking past them. Somewhere behind her, she heard a door open. Something about the way it sounded made the hairs on her neck rise. And then, without any announcement, 6 men entered the hall from the side corridor. They didn't speak. They didn't wave. They just walked, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, like they were headed toward a mission. Each one wore a tailored suit. Not flashy, just clean. Black, gray, navy. Their presence was immediate, commanding without effort. The room seemed to lean in. Conversations slowed, phones lowered, eyes tracked them as they moved. Danielle turned to see them, then froze. The tallest one, a man with salt and pepper stubble and calm eyes, broke away from the group. He walked straight toward her. The guard shifted. You okay, Ms. Merriweather? He asked. His voice was warm, familiar, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to carry weight. Danielle blinked twice. Hawk? He smiled. Jalen sent us. We wanted to surprise him. Didn't know we'd need to step in. The taller guard tried to intercept. Sir, this is a private seating area. We're in the middle of a situation. The man, Hawk, turned his head slightly, not aggressive, just direct. What kind of situation? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a mother trying to sit in the seat her son gave her. One of the other men stepped beside Hawk, broad shoulders, deep brown skin, clean-shaven with a calm but alert face. She's with us, he said. And if she's leaving, so are we. Sir, we don't want any problems, the shorter guard said, suddenly uncertain. Neither do we, said Hawk, but you already have one. Someone in the third row murmured, That's them. That's the guys from that Navy SEAL unit. Now more phones were up, but not because of the confrontation, because people recognized the faces. One of the men had been in the news after a rescue mission overseas. Another had testified before Congress. The energy in the room shifted, again. Danielle stayed quiet, still holding her flowers. She looked at Hawk, then at the man beside him, then at the others, 6 of them, standing not behind her, but beside her. That meant something. The guards exchanged a glance, then one of them backed off. Enjoy the ceremony, ma'am, the tall one muttered. Danielle finally sat down. Her seat never felt so right. But before she could breathe again, one of the SEALs leaned down and whispered something that made her heart skip. Jalen didn't want you to sit here alone, the SEAL whispered, crouched beside her seat. His name was Trevor Banks, and Danielle remembered him now. He used to come over during training breaks when Jalen was stationed in Coronado, always polite, always quiet. He said, if anything happens, you stand next to my mama like you would next to me. Danielle's throat tightened, but she nodded. No words would have come out if she tried. Trevor gave her a gentle pat on the arm and rose. The men didn't sit in the row behind her. They stood. Some crossed their arms. Others scanned the room like their instincts were still on high alert. Not aggressively, not like a threat, just watchful. Like they'd been trained to protect something, and right now, that something was her. People kept sneaking glances. Danielle could feel it. A group of students whispered in the corner near the bleachers. A middle-aged man with a camera kept pretending to take crowd shots, but never moved his lens off her row. She caught one woman actually mouthing, "What happened?" to someone 2 seats down. The answer was simple. She tried to sit in the spot her son gave her. That was it. That was the whole story. But to some folks, that was already too much. A woman in a gold pantsuit, 3 rows up, leaned toward her husband and said just loud enough, "They must have thought she was a crasher." Her husband whispered something back, and both chuckled quietly. Danielle stared forward. She didn't react. She just adjusted the roses in her lap and lifted her chin. Then, unexpectedly, a young man in a green graduation gown slipped over from the side aisle. He looked no older than 22, pale skin, light brown hair, freckles, nervous. "Ma'am?" he said softly. Danielle turned. "I just wanted to say, I saw what happened. I'm sorry they treated you like that. It wasn't right." Danielle managed a small smile. "Thank you. I'm graduating today too," he added, then paused. "But I think your son already won the day." She chuckled, just a little. It was enough to loosen her chest. "Thank you, baby. That means more than you know." He gave her a shy smile and walked back to his seat. The guards had retreated to the back corner of the hall now, whispering with a faculty coordinator. A woman with a headset and a clipboard kept glancing toward Danielle's row. She looked flustered, like someone told her something she didn't want to hear too late. Another person came forward, this time a woman in her 50s wearing a maroon blazer. She looked like part of the graduation committee. "Ms. Merriweather?" she asked gently. Danielle braced herself. "I just wanted to let you know your seating was correct. We apologize for the confusion, and if you'd prefer, we've arranged a separate seat for you and your guests up near the stage." Danielle looked over at Hawk, who raised an eyebrow like, "You want to move, you say the word." She shook her head. "This seat's fine." The woman nodded. "Congratulations on your son. Everyone's talking about him." "They've been talking about him," Danielle said, a quiet fire beneath the words. "They just didn't see him." The woman's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. "Well, if you need anything..." Danielle turned back around before she finished the sentence. The roses in her lap felt heavier now. Not in a bad way, in a way that meant presence. Like her son was already there. Like the weight of this day, of all the years that led to it, finally had somewhere to rest. The graduation hadn't even started, and somehow the entire room had shifted. Phones were still out. Whispers still floated. But the looks on people's faces weren't just curiosity anymore. Some looked embarrassed. A few looked thoughtful. And a couple looked changed. But in the next moment, the lights dimmed and the music started, and Danielle realized her boy was about to walk across that stage. The band struck up the processional, bold and ceremonial, and the graduates began to file in, 2 by 2, down the center aisle. Caps, gowns, tassels swaying. Families craned their necks for a glimpse. Phones shot upward like periscopes. Cheers erupted in clusters as loved ones spotted their own. Danielle stayed seated, both hands wrapped around the stems of the roses. She didn't cheer right away. She scanned every face, every walk, waiting to find his stride in the crowd. Then she saw him. Jalen Merriweather. Black cap, maroon gown, gold honor cord slung over his shoulders. His steps were smooth, head held high, not cocky, not showy, just sure. Like he knew exactly who he was, like no one could tell him otherwise. Danielle's breath caught in her throat. All the years, all the nights spent praying over bills, waiting on late phone calls from overseas, writing letters that might never come back. This moment made it all real. And then he saw her. Midway down the aisle, Jalen's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on the one thing he was looking for. His mother, sitting exactly where he told her to sit. Behind her, 6 of his former teammates standing like pillars. His lips parted, not in surprise, but in relief, like he had been holding his breath since that morning and could finally exhale. He gave the tiniest nod. Danielle smiled back, tears filling her eyes but not falling yet. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Hawk leaned over toward her and whispered, "You raised him right." "I tried," she whispered back. The ceremony continued. Speeches rolled one after the other, some long, some rushed. A student rep joked about finals. The dean of engineering talked about innovation and sacrifice. There was laughter, applause, but Danielle heard most of it like background noise. Her eyes never drifted far from her son. Even when others stood, even when she clapped, she kept him in view. At one point, she glanced back at the seals behind her. They still hadn't sat. Trevor adjusted his jacket. The one next to him, a man with deep lines around his eyes and the kind of stillness you only learn through war, didn't blink for almost a full minute. Danielle turned back toward the stage. The rows of graduates were thinning now. It was close. They were in the M names. The announcer's voice echoed over the loudspeakers like a bell. Jalen Anthony Merriweather. And the room erupted. Not because they all knew him, but because enough people had seen what happened before. Enough people had been watching since the moment she stood up and refused to leave. Some clapped, others whistled. A few shouted, "Yes, sir," like they were greeting a general. And through it all, Danielle stood tall. Jalen climbed the steps, walked across the stage with deliberate purpose, shook the president's hand, accepted his degree, and then paused. He didn't rush off. He didn't turn his back. He turned toward the crowd and raised his degree in one hand like a flag. Then, for one breathless second, he pointed it directly at her. Danielle, the one who held it down when he was gone, the one who believed in him before he ever believed in himself. Danielle's eyes burned, and this time the tears came fast. She clapped, laughed, and finally let herself cry, all at once. A couple of the SEALs clapped too, not loud, not showy, just with respect. Then Jalen stepped off the stage and walked back to his seat like nothing happened. But something had. And even before the ceremony ended, someone 3 rows over whispered, "I hope this goes viral." The rest of the names were called, but for Danielle, time bent. She heard them, but she wasn't listening anymore. The applause, the shifting seats, the music, it all blurred into background noise. She kept replaying that moment, her boy on stage, that look in his eyes, the way he lifted his degree and pointed it straight at her, like she was the reason he got there. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. The roses were still in her lap. They looked a little bent now, but she didn't care. She would keep them forever. Behind her, the SEALs finally sat down, quietly, casually, like a unit resting after standing guard. Trevor leaned forward and tapped her shoulder. "You good now, Mama D?" That's what they always called her, Mama D, even back when Jalen was deployed and they'd video chat from the base. She'd send cookies and care packages with notes like, "Keep your heads on straight. Nobody better die before you write back." Danielle turned, smiling through wet lashes. "I'm good, baby. Y'all can breathe now." Trevor grinned. "We weren't worried." "Liar." The guys chuckled, low and warm. Then one of them, Koakelakolio, a soft-spoken Hawaiian with arms the size of telephone poles, spoke up. "We weren't going to let them move you. They don't know what it means to earn that seat." The one sitting next to him, Jasper Briggs, nodded. "That seat's not just a chair. That's years. That's deployments. That's you being both mom and dad. That's showing up for every letter, every call. That's the kind of seat you don't touch." Danielle felt a lump in her throat again. "You boys came all this way just to make sure I sat down?" she asked. Trevor shrugged. "We came for the ceremony, but we stayed standing because of how they treated you." "They didn't treat me," she said quietly. "They assumed." That word hung in the air like fog. Hawk, still calm, still composed, leaned forward now. "I've seen war zones where people made better calls under pressure than those 2 guards did." "They didn't see you," Jasper added. "They saw what they wanted to see." Danielle didn't say anything right away, but her silence spoke louder than any reply. The closing remarks began. The university president thanked the faculty, saluted the graduates, urged them to build a better future. But some folks in that auditorium weren't thinking about the future. They were thinking about what just happened. Because stories like that don't stay quiet. Not anymore. Someone posted a clip to social media before the ceremony even ended. Just a short one, 30 seconds maybe. It showed Danielle being questioned, showed the SEALs stepping in, showed the moment Jalen pointed to his mother from the stage. By the time the band played the recessional, the video had already been shared thousands of times. When the graduates poured into the courtyard outside, caps tossed, photos snapping, hugs flying, Jalen found her. He didn't run. He walked straight to her with the calm stride of a man who'd walked into combat zones and walked out stronger. Danielle dropped the flowers and wrapped her arms around him. "I saw," he whispered in her ear. "I saw the whole thing. I didn't move," she said into his shoulder. "I stayed." "You didn't have to," he said. "You earned that seat a long time ago." He pulled back, eyes shiny. "They didn't know who you were, but I do." Behind them, the SEALs closed in, laughing now, slapping Jalen on the back, cracking jokes about him finally getting soft. Danielle laughed too. For the first time that day, she felt light. A university staff member approached nervously, holding a clipboard and a slightly panicked expression. "Ms. Merriweather, Mr. Merriweather, We're so sorry for earlier. We're investigating what happened and speaking with the guards. Jalen turned to her. You don't have to say anything. Danielle looked at the woman and said, clear and measured, you don't need to investigate if you already know what happened. The woman blinked. Danielle turned back to her son. Let's take some pictures. But even as the cameras flashed and the crowd swirled, someone nearby muttered, this is going to blow up tonight. I can feel it. By the time the crowd thinned and the sun dipped just a bit lower in the sky, Jalen had taken more photos than he ever thought possible. With his teammates, with old professors, with random classmates he barely remembered but hugged like family today. But the ones he cared about the most were the ones with his mother, her in the middle, him beside her, and the 6 seals standing like guardians on either side. No forced smiles, just real ones. You could see it in the eyes. Come on, Mama, he said, holding out the diploma toward her. You should hold it. Danielle laughed. No, baby, that's yours. I wouldn't have it if it weren't for you. Hold it. She took it carefully, like it might break. The gold lettering shimmered in the light. She looked at it, then at him, then down again. I used to pray over you every night, she said softly, even when you were overseas, even when you stopped answering your phone for weeks. I know. Every time I got a knock at the door, I held my breath. Jalen's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Danielle touched the corner of the diploma with her thumb. But this is something I didn't even know how to pray for. You made it. He nodded once. We made it. She hugged him again, tighter this time, long enough that people around them paused for a beat. There was something in that embrace that said everything. Years of struggle, of sacrifice, of love that refused to break. Nearby, the seals had drifted a bit, giving them space. Hawk leaned against a stone pillar, watching the crowd. Trevor and Jasper chatted with a few students who recognized them. Koa was laughing with a group of kids who had no idea who he was, but were fascinated by the size of his hands. Then a voice called out from the stairs of the student center. Hey, are you the guy whose mom got kicked out of the graduation? Jalen turned. A student stood there, phone in hand, already filming. Is it true you brought 6 Navy SEALs with you? Jalen frowned but didn't answer. Another student chimed in. Man, they said the guards tried to escort her out. That's wild. But you walked up there like nothing happened. Danielle stepped forward calmly. Nothing happened because they didn't let it. The group quieted. Jalen looked around and noticed more phones pointed their way now. Whispers again, eyes darting. He recognized the feeling. It was the same thing he used to feel overseas, when civilians stared too long, half respect, half curiosity. I didn't bring them, he said finally. They showed up because they wanted to. That's what real brothers do. Someone called out from the side. You gonna post about it? He shook his head. Don't need to. But someone already had. An hour later, they were back at the hotel. The dinner reservations were in 30 minutes, but no one was moving yet. Everyone had kicked off their shoes. The suits were off, the ties undone. Danielle was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone. Jalen? He looked up from across the room. It's already at 90,000 views. He raised an eyebrow. What is? She turned her phone and showed him the clip. The video from the ceremony. The one that showed her standing. The guards stepping in. The SEALs arriving like something out of a film. And then the camera had zoomed in, perfectly timed, just as Jalen raised the diploma and pointed it toward her. Someone captioned it, she said. It says, she raised a warrior. They stood for a queen. Jalen rubbed his face. It's a bit much. Danielle grinned. No, it's not. He looked around the room, at the guys sprawled across chairs and sofas, at his mom still holding her phone with the light in her eyes. And for a second, he let himself feel it. Not fame, not attention, but peace. And just when things seemed to settle, his phone buzzed with a message from someone he didn't expect. Jalen glanced at his phone. The notification read, from Chancellor Reardon. He tapped it open. Mr. Merriweather, we saw the footage. We're deeply sorry. We'd like to meet yourself and your mother. Whenever you're available, please let us know how we can make this right. He sat with that for a moment. Across the room, Danielle had kicked off her shoes and was massaging her feet like she'd been running a marathon. Ma, he called gently. She looked up. Yeah? He held up the phone. The university wants to meet. Says they want to apologize. Officially. She raised an eyebrow. Took 100,000 people watching for them to grow a conscience? He smirked. Apparently. Danielle didn't answer right away, just went back to scrolling, her lips tight in thought. Then, tell them I'm busy. Seriously? She nodded. I got dinner in 30 minutes and a life to live after that. Jalen laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was her. That same strength that got him through every dark night in Afghanistan, every cold bunk in Germany, every lonely hour on campus, surrounded by people who didn't look like him and didn't know his story. The next morning, though, Danielle did agree to speak, not to the university, but to a local journalist who reached out. They met at a coffee shop on Sierra Avenue in Bakersfield, California, where Danielle was flying back through, no camera crew, just a voice recorder and a quiet booth. The reporter asked, "What made you stay seated even when they told you to leave?" Danielle stirred her coffee, then looked her straight in the eyes. "I didn't stay because I was trying to prove anything," she said. "I stayed because I belonged. My son told me where to sit. I believed him more than I believed them." And the SEALs? They didn't raise their voices. They didn't threaten anyone. They just showed what real support looks like. Quiet, solid, unshakable. The interview ran the next day. By then, the story had hit national news. Headlines read, "Guards try to remove Black mother from graduation. Veterans stand up without saying a word. She didn't move, and they didn't let her." When respect looks like protection. People posted their own takes. Some called it a lesson in dignity. Others called it a moment that showed what real manhood looks like. Some brought up race, others tried to ignore it, but the truth was baked into the footage. It didn't need explaining, it just needed witnessing. The university issued a formal apology. The guards were reassigned pending further review. Jalen and Danielle were invited back for a special luncheon honoring military families. Danielle didn't go. She said she'd had enough ceremony. Jalen did go, though, quietly, not for the spotlight, but to shake the hand of one janitor who said he'd seen it all, start to finish, and hadn't been able to sleep since. "You remind me of my son," the janitor said. "I hope that's a good thing." "Oh, it is," the man replied, "but I just wish he had more people like you standing with him." Back in Charlotte, Danielle went back to her normal routine. Church on Sundays, grocery shopping on Tuesdays. And now and then, someone would recognize her. At the gas station, at the bank, once at the post office, where a teenage girl burst into tears just thanking her for not getting up. "You didn't yell," she said. "You didn't even raise your hand, and they still knew they were wrong." Danielle hugged her. Sometimes resistance looks like rage. Sometimes it looks like walking out. But sometimes it looks like sitting still. That's what people remembered. Not just the SEALs. Not just Jalen, but her, sitting there, holding her roses like a crown. And somehow, in a world that loves drama and chaos, that quiet power shook the room harder than any shout ever could. So next time someone tries to push you out of a seat you've earned, remember Danielle, stay where you are, look them in the eye, and if you're lucky, maybe someone will be standing right behind you too. If this story made you feel something, share it. Speak up when others are silent. Stand up when someone else is being pushed down. The world doesn't change by accident. It changes when ordinary people decide they belong.